She sent her last text message at 9 minutes past 10 on a Tuesday night. She was sitting inside her own home on Norman Street in Ilkeston, Derbyshire. She was 31 years old. She was a mother of 2. And somewhere in that house, the man who had spent years trying to own her was still sitting in her living room, refusing to leave. That message would be the last word she ever sent to anyone who loved her, and it would become the thread that unraveled everything. Welcome to Crime Vault Files, the channel that opens the cases that deserve to be heard. If this one moves you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss another case. Now, let us get into it. Her name was Sarah Henshaw. To the people lucky enough to know her, she was warmth in human form. Loud, outgoing, and full of life. The one with the infectious laugh that filled the room before she even said a word. She was a devoted daughter to her mother, Lorraine Henshaw. She was a fiercely loving mother to her 2 little girls. Her sister, Kelsey, described her as bubbly and mischievous. Someone who always put others first, who would do anything to help anyone. She had also spent years locked inside one of the most dangerous situations a person can face. A relationship with a man who did not love her so much as he believed he owned her. And when she finally, fully, permanently decided to take that ownership away from him, he killed her. This is Sarah's story, told in full because she deserves nothing less. It was 2011 when Sarah first met Darren Hall in Ilkeston. Hall was a carpet fitter who lived on Rodney Way, just across town. Sarah was already raising a young daughter on her own, and she carried that particular, careful kind of hope, the hope that this time might be different. By 2012, she had introduced him to her mother. Lorraine Henshaw was not easily reassured. From that very first meeting, she saw things that troubled her. The way Darren spoke over Sarah. The way he inserted himself into her decisions. The quiet but relentless need to know where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing at all times. None of it was explosive. None of it would have looked alarming to a stranger glancing in. That is precisely what makes coercive control so dangerous. It does not arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly and steadily, like water wearing down stone, until the person on the receiving end has been so completely conditioned that they can no longer see the cage they are standing inside. Coercive control became a criminal offense in England and Wales under the Serious Crime Act of 2015, a legal acknowledgement of what survivors had always known. That the most dangerous abusers are not always the ones who hit the hardest. They are the ones who control the most completely. By 2016, the mask had come off entirely. Sarah was pregnant with their daughter, their second child together, and inside the home they shared, Darren Hall pushed her in the stomach during an argument. She was taken to hospital. The baby survived. But that act, committed against a pregnant woman, against the mother of his own unborn child, told Sarah, and told anyone willing to look clearly, exactly who this man was beneath the surface. That assault went without formal legal consequence. This matters deeply, because abusers who face no consequences do not reflect. They do not change. They simply learn that what they are doing is permitted, that the boundary they have crossed will not be enforced, and so they push further. Sarah did not leave immediately. We need to sit with that, not to question her, but to understand her. Because leaving an abusive relationship while pregnant, with a child already at home, with a partner who has spent years quietly cutting you off from your own sense of reality, and that is not a simple decision. It is one of the most dangerous things a woman in that position can attempt. The failure to leave is never the victim's failure. It is always the direct result of a trap the abuser has been building around her, brick by brick, for years. In 2017, Sarah found the strength. She ended the relationship for the first time. She held on to her home on Norman Street in Ilkeston, a house on a quiet street in a town she knew, and she began the slow, necessary work of rebuilding, herself as a single mother to her 2 girls. But one critical detail was left unresolved. Darren Hall still had a key to her front door. It was never returned. The locks on Norman Street were never changed. In the context of everything that had come before, that key was not simply a piece of metal. It was a statement. It was Hall's way of holding on to something, a physical, tangible extension of the control he refused to fully surrender. In his mind, that key meant the separation was not truly final, that she had not truly gone, that she was, in some essential sense, still his. Some contact between them continued in the years that followed, in part because they shared a daughter. Co-parenting with an abusive ex-partner is one of the most painful situations imaginable. It hands the abuser a legitimate reason to remain present in the victim's life, a foot permanently wedged in a door she is trying to close. Then, in 2022, Hall wormed his way back in. Sarah was grieving. Her grandfather had passed away. She was vulnerable. And according to those who loved her, Hall used that vulnerability to re-enter her life at her lowest point. By June of 2023, Sarah had made up her mind for the last time. She ended the relationship, definitively, completely, with no room for misinterpretation. Those who loved her said she was clear. She was done. This was not another pause. This was the end. For most people, that kind of closing statement is painful to receive but eventually accepted. For Darren Hall, a man whose entire sense of identity had been constructed around his ability to dominate one specific woman, Sarah's decision was not rejection. It was an existential threat. It was the thing he had spent over a decade trying to prevent. Research into intimate partner homicide is unambiguous on this point. The period immediately following a victim's decision to permanently separate is statistically the most dangerous window in any abusive relationship. The more clearly a victim communicates that it is truly over, the more the abuser's fragile grip on his sense of control begins to fracture. And for men like Darren Hall, that fracturing does not lead to grief or acceptance. It leads to violence. The 20th of June, 2023 was a Tuesday. Sarah spent the earlier part of the day with a friend in Ilkeston, an ordinary afternoon in a town she had called home for years. She was last captured on closed-circuit television footage at around 9 o'clock that evening near her home on Norman Street. That footage, completely unremarkable at the time it was recorded, would later become the last known image of Sarah Henshaw alive. She went home, and before 10 o'clock that night the front door of the house on Norman Street opened, not by Sarah's hand but by Darren Hall's, using the key to her home that she had previously asked him to hand back and that he had kept. Hall had let himself into the property while Sarah was still out and was already inside when she returned. She told him directly and clearly to leave. He refused. He sat down. He stayed. They ate dinner together in that house on Norman Street. They argued. The atmosphere inside that home carried the kind of weight that anyone who has ever lived inside an abusive dynamic will recognize. Loaded, suffocating, crackling with something unspoken and dangerous. Sarah drove her friend home. She held herself together long enough to do that. Then she came back to Norman Street. Alone. To him, waiting. At 2 minutes past 10, inside her home on Norman Street, Sarah Henshaw exchanged messages with her best friend. At 9 minutes past 10, she sent her final message. It was the last time Sarah communicated with anyone who loved her. At 37 minutes past 10, her best friend sent a follow-up asking if everything was okay. The reply never came. A neighbor living close to the Norman Street property was awake that night. From the direction of Sarah's bedroom, she heard a loud bang. Then nothing. A silence so sudden and so complete that it did not feel like quiet. It felt like something had stopped. She sent Sarah a message. A reply came back almost immediately from Sarah's phone. The dog had suffered a seizure, it said. Everything was fine. She believed it. How could she not? What she could not have known was that Sarah had not written that message. Darren Hall was sitting inside the Norman Street house with Sarah's phone in his hands, typing in her voice, constructing a story, buying himself time. In the immediate aftermath of what he had done to the mother of his child, his first instinct was not grief. It was not panic. It was control. The same calculating instinct that had defined every year of his relationship with Sarah Henshaw, now turned entirely toward the problem of his own survival. And then he went to work. In the early hours of the 21st of June, the neighbor looked out of her window again. She saw Darren Hall standing at the back of his van outside the Norman Street property, the rear doors open. Then he closed them, climbed behind the wheel, and drove away from Ilkeston into the dark. She had no way of knowing what she had just witnessed, but she would not forget it. Our phones carry more of our story than we ever fully realize. Every step counted. Every GPS coordinate logged. Every Wi-Fi network connected to, time-stamped, preserved, and waiting. At 1:50 in the morning, Hall's phone connected to the Wi-Fi network inside Sarah's home on Norman Street. Then it synced to the GPS unit in his van. The data placed him traveling north on the M1 motorway out of Derbyshire, exiting at Junction 29 and stopping at a lay-by on the westbound carriageway of the A617, the bypass road that runs between Junction 29 of the M1 and Chesterfield. A remote, quiet stretch of road. The kind of place with no reason to appear in anyone's journey at 2 in the morning, unless the reason is entirely deliberate. Over approximately 9 minutes at that lay-by on the A617, Hall's phone torch was activated and deactivated repeatedly. His health application recorded 266 steps, a level of physical activity completely at odds with his established pattern of zero movement during those overnight hours. Someone was working in the dark. On the westbound lay-by of the A617, 5 meters from the tree line, in the dead of a June night. Moving purposefully, methodically, doing something that required both light and considerable effort. He then drove back to Ilkeston. In the days that followed, Hall told people Sarah had simply walked out. He told friends she had left the Norman Street house on the evening of the 20th of June, saying she was going to see a friend, and that was the last time he had seen her. He told the same story to her neighbor. He had no satisfying explanation for why Sarah's car was still parked outside the house on Norman Street. He suggested some of her belongings were missing, building the fiction of a woman who had chosen to vanish. He did not report her missing. Instead, he returned to the Norman Street property and began disposing of her things. Sarah's dressing gown and slippers were removed and later found by officers, discarded at a nearby skip and a recycling center. Small, intimate items, the quiet evidence of a life being erased. Meanwhile, Hall continued to use Sarah's phone to send messages to her friends, creating the illusion that she was still alive. Then he threw the phone away. He went about his daily business in Ilkeston as though nothing had happened. 3 days passed. On the 23rd of June, police were finally contacted with concerns about Sarah's welfare. Officers attended the Norman Street address and forced entry. What they found inside told its own story. A bucket, a mop, and bleach, evidence of urgent and deliberate cleaning. A broken necklace bearing an elephant charm that belonged to Sarah. 23 items were seized in total from the property: phones, a laptop, clothing, and a blue tarpaulin. Darren Hall was arrested on suspicion of murder that same day. When questioned, he claimed he had no idea where Sarah was. He told investigators that it was, in his words, their job to find her. On the evening of the 25th of June, a specialist search team was deployed to the westbound lay-by on the A617 near junction 29 of the M1, the exact location the phone data had identified. In the early hours of the 26th of June, in a wooded area 5 meters from the road, they found what remained of Sarah Henshaw. Her body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Fragments of blue tarpaulin were recovered nearby, matching the one seized from her home on Norman Street in Ilkeston. The same tarpaulin, the same man, the same deliberate, calculated cruelty carried from beginning to end. The trial of Darren Hall opened on the 4th of December 2023 at Derby Crown Court. Prosecutor Michelle Healy, KC, told the court that Hall had kept a key to Sarah's Norman Street home and had let himself in on the afternoon of the 20th of June while she was out. She told the jury that Hall had told a series of lies against a background of documented domestic abuse. Hall initially denied everything, composed and steady, the performance of a man who believed he had covered his tracks thoroughly enough. But as the evidence stacked up at Derby Crown Court, his account shifted. Sarah, he now claimed, had fallen down the stairs inside the Norman Street property. It was an accident, he said. He had panicked. The forensic evidence told a different story entirely. There were no injuries consistent with a fall. What pathologists found instead was heavy bruising around Sarah's neck. Bruising that, as the court heard, was approximately the width of a dressing gown cord. Mr. Justice Goss, presiding over the trial at Derby Crown Court, addressed Hall directly during sentencing. He told him he was satisfied there had been earlier occasions in the relationship where Hall had been violent towards Sarah and bruised her. He said that whatever arose in the bedroom of the Norman Street house on the night of the 20th of June, Hall had attacked Sarah and had almost certainly strangled her. The jury at Derby Crown Court deliberated for just over 4 hours. They returned a verdict of guilty to murder. Mr. Justice Goss sentenced Darren Hall to life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 17 years to be served before any eligibility for parole. Hall appeared via video link from HMP Nottingham, trembling throughout the proceedings. Mr. Justice Goss told him that the harm he had done and the suffering he had caused could never be undone by any sentence of the court. In the public gallery at Derby Crown Court, Sarah's family had been present throughout the entire trial. Her sister, Kelsey Henshaw, addressed the court in a victim impact statement. She described Sarah as bubbly and mischievous, someone who was really caring and would do anything to help anyone. She told the court that the family had nightmares about how Hall had murdered their sister and the evil way he had dumped her body. She said the biggest piece of them was missing. She said their hearts were broken forever. But she also said they would always carry Sarah forward in their lives. Their mother, Lorraine Henshaw, told the court that Hall was a monster who had disposed of her daughter's body like a piece of rubbish. She said all Sarah had ever wanted was stability, to settle down with a partner who truly loved her. Detective Inspector Maria Pleece, who led the Derbyshire Constabulary murder investigation, said that Hall was a manipulative, deceiving, and dangerous individual. She said that only 2 people knew exactly what happened inside the Norman Street house on the night of the 20th of June. Sarah could not tell anyone, and Hall refused to give a truthful account. But what the investigation established without any doubt was that Sarah's life had ended at his hand, that he had dumped her body in the hope she would never be found, and that he had fabricated an entire story to cover what he had done. The community around Ilkeston rallied. Over £9,000 was raised to support Sarah's funeral and her 2 daughters. 2 little girls who will grow up without their mother, but who will know that she was fought for, that she was loved, and that the man who took her from them is behind bars. Here is what the title of this case truly means. It was not one dramatic moment that caught Darren Hall, it was a chain, and Sarah's last text message was the first link. When her best friend sent that follow-up at 37 minutes past 10 on the night of the 20th of June and received only silence, a clock started ticking. The concern that grew through that night and the days that followed eventually became the phone call to Derbyshire Constabulary on the 23rd of June. That call sent officers to Norman Street. Norman Street sent investigators to the phone data. The phone data placed Hall on the westbound A617 at 2 in the morning. The A617 led the search team to the wooded lay-by 5 meters from the road. And the wooded lay-by brought Sarah home. Every step of that chain began because someone who loved Sarah noticed that her last message went unanswered. Sarah Henshaw was 31 years old. She lived on Norman Street in Ilkeston, Derbyshire. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend who left her mark on everyone she met. She deserved safety inside her own home. She deserved to have the locks changed when she asked for that key back. She deserved so much more time. If you or someone you know is living in a situation that feels controlling, frightening, or unsafe, please reach out. The National Domestic Abuse Helpline in the United Kingdom is available around the clock. Help exists, and no one should face it alone. If this case has stayed with you, if it should stay with you, please like this video, share it so Sarah's name reaches further, and subscribe to Crime Vault Files. We will see you in the next case.